Aloha and welcome to the 40th Annual Hawaii International Film Festival presented by Halekulani. My name is Lee Ngo and I'm moderating our discussion with Sujata Day, writer, director, and lead actor of Definition Please, as well as co-stars Anna Kaja and Ritesh Rajan. We would like to extend our thanks to all our sponsors for supporting HIFF 2020. Sujata, Anna, and Ritesh, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Lee.
Yeah. Thank you.
So some programming updates and for everyone that's watching right now. For up-to-date information and additions to our program and the full schedule of films, events, etc., you can go to HIFF Talk Story Sessions and Q&As. Visit us at hiff.org. Also, we'd like everyone to participate in the Audience Award voting. To participate in our Hawaii News Now Audience Award, please head to hawaiinewsnow.com/HIFF to cast your vote for the favorite narrative, documentary, and short film. Mahalo to Hawaii News Now for their support of this as well. So my first question is to Sujata. This film is set in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, which is where you grew up. I have a personal connection to Greensburg. Specifically, I actually lived in Pittsburgh for a while, and so a lot of the shots and just the general feel was very nostalgic to me in some ways.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I lived there. So I've only been in a few times out in Greensburg, but I was living in the Squirrel Hill area mostly, but there was something about the vibe of the city that really connected with me. So what compelled you in making the story to return to your hometown?
Well, I love my hometown. I'm a huge fan of my hometown. I love going back home for the holidays and even in the summertime to visit. And at some point when we were growing up, I think we were in middle school or high school, my parents, there were like 5 Indian families that lived in Fort Allen, which is even the smaller area of Greensburg that I'm from. And they were all moving to bigger houses, right? And it was outside of Greensburg. And my parents were kind of talking to us like, oh, how would you feel if you would want to like move to a bigger house or move to another area? And I was always like, no, I love this house. I love this neighborhood. All my friends are here. I can walk around. And so I'm like just obsessed with Greensburg, actually, and I love my high school. I had a great, middle school, high school experience. So it was kind of natural for me to just go back home and shoot this movie because it is such a personal movie and it's about a South Asian American family. So, even in terms of when you're prepping for a shoot, you're trying to find a location and it's my family's house and it's already dressed for the shoot. So we didn't really have to do a ton of work in terms of we had an amazing production designer who kind of switched things up and changed things around. But it was really important for me to just go back home and it was great how the community responded to us. There's a thing in Pittsburgh where you don't need to get film permits for anything, which was shocking to us because in LA, obviously, if you want to shoot at anyone's house, you have to pay them like $10,000, So when we had this night shoot that Tesh was a part of, and we were going to be yelling outside for probably like an hour or two around 11 p.m. midnight. And I wrote handwritten letters to 6 to 8 of the houses around me being like, hey, we're doing a shoot tonight for a film. Here's my producer's phone number. Please let us know if you have any problems with that. And we got a phone call being like, hey, this is cool. Can we be in the movie? and then even while we were shooting the scene, and Tesh can attest to this, there was people coming out in lawn chairs, putting their lawn chairs out, cracking open a beer and just watching us shoot the scene.
Yeah, and the best part was that I was in my underwear and basically tighty whities, just running back and forth from the front door to the yard. And everyone was just watching me run around. It was pretty funny.
It was great.
Were people starting to put down duct tape around your shoot just to kind of lock in before the next location, or was it starting to become a bit of a spectacle over time?
No, I don't think it ever became a spectacle, but it was I just really appreciated how the community rallied around us. Like we had to, even during that night shoot, we had to put a light up at the top of the street, obviously in someone else's yard. And my producer went up to the door and was like, hey, is it cool if we put a light in the yard? And they were like, oh, is this Sujata's movie? And we were like, of course, you know, and it was just so wonderful how everyone rallied around it. And it didn't become a spectacle. It just became something that was happening in Greensburg that was really cool, because I feel like a lot of the movies that shoot in Pittsburgh shoot in the actual city. So they are excited about that, and that's awesome to see. But I think the shoots don't come out to Greensburg very much, so that was nice. Absolutely,
yeah. It's so great to kind of see so much more of the surrounding areas, and a lot of in Pittsburgh and many little scenes I've come to recognize as like favorite parts of town that I go to. But but I grew up in the suburbs, so there's something about the feel of your film that is very familiar to me. Sujata, I want to ask, you of course had to wear a lot of hats running this project as lead actor, writer, and director. Tell us a little bit more about juggling all those roles. And if you were to go through this process again, is there a particular aspect of that kind of filmmaking that you would prefer to do?
So juggling all those roles was really fun. I loved being in control of everything. That was nice, having last say on literally everything, which is, I probably think in the future that will never happen again. So I enjoyed that aspect of it. I will just say that I was over-prepared for every single aspect. So once we got the script down to the shooting script, I didn't touch it. I was like, this is it. This is the shooting script. This is the script that's going out to actors. And so I could kind of put that writing hat away. And then once we started to prep for shooting the film, I got my director's hat on, and I was having movie dates with my DP, Brooks Ludwig, and doing the shot list and the storyboards, and just making sure I was really prepared in terms of communicating with Brooks about what I wanted the movie to feel like, because I knew that we weren't going to have time on set for me to look at playback. So I had to 100% trust Brooks in terms of what it was going to look like, and make sure that he understood what I wanted. And then with the acting part of it all, I just made sure to remember my lines. And I will say, in terms of casting the film, I'm just so glad I did an awesome job casting, and the actors around me, such as Tesh and Anna, were fully prepared and just dreams to work alongside. And it felt like I had to bring myself to their level. So they made me a better actor, which was really great. And the one thing that I would not do in the future is I don't love producing. So I would take myself out of the producing equation, and I would want to create solely, or I would want to focus solely on the creative aspects of it.
Gotcha. This next question is a question for everyone. There's a lot of allusion to Bollywood throughout this film, and this might be a given considering the subject matter and the family that we're following, but I'd love to know how, if there were certain films or certain narratives that were certainly of interest when it comes to integrating them into the story.
I think I can take this question first, and then Tesh and Anna can, say their thoughts on it. So something that I do with my mom when I come back home for the holidays is watch Bengali soap operas pretty much all day and all night. And I'm fluent in Bengali, so it's really fun for me to watch something where I don't have to read the subtitles. And they do go into absurd situations. And a lot of my writing is very grounded, but there's some kind of magical realism element or an absurdity to it. So I maybe gleaned it from these soap operas. In terms of Bollywood, we all grew up with Bollywood movies, and I love Bollywood music. So music played a huge role in my film. And my composer, Amanda Jones, she started working on the music when she got the script. So it was even before we started shooting, and I would send her actually Bollywood songs that I was like, oh, can you do like something like this mixed with this? And it would be like 3 different Bollywood songs for her inspiration. And then she would come back with something perfect and original. And she hired singers out of Bombay, which was incredible. So yeah, there's definitely a Bollywood / Indian flavor to the film.
Wonderful. Are there others who have, I guess, a passion for this genre that can also chime in as well?
For me, I have very little experience with Bollywood in the sense of I don't sit down and watch the movies. My mom wishes I did, but they've always kind of been around in the background in my house. And for me, the Bollywood elements in the movie, not to say like there was anything specific that was taken from a specific Bollywood movie, but it was almost, for me personally, the overall relationship that Sunny has with his mother. It's kind of like, it plays, I feel, a little homage to the Bollywood relationships still that a lot of sons and mothers have in the bigger, blockbuster movies, that there is a certain sense of flair, and sometimes the son can't do anything wrong, and those types of archetypal relationships that Sunny does have with his mom, that she kind of plays a blind eye to everything that he does that is maybe negative or destructive. And at the same time, how much fun they have as characters. They're very playful with each other. She is his mom, but there is a sense of like really close friendship between the two of them, that they can just sit there, jump on the couch, and just get really cozy and have a great time and be very, very comfortable. And that kind of relationship, I think, reflects sort of inspiration from a lot of Bollywood movies.
Wonderful. I echo all of that. And then Sujata, in the original script, she had that my late husband and I had this song that we really loved together. It was a ghazal. What was it? Because it didn't actually wind up in the film, right? We had to change it.
Oh, yeah. We couldn't use any of that.
We couldn't use it. Yeah. But I remember watching, I went and I watched that film and then watched that scene, such pure, deep, innocent love, like just that, that sort of purity of romance and innocence of love that is just so Bollywood, and soaking that in. And then there was that other like kid song that I learned that we all did together. Do you remember what that was? Like,
oh yeah, during the talent show.
Yeah.
That's actually a song that I learned at Hindu temple camp.
Right.
For my praise.
Right. Yeah.
And I would sing it all the time as a kid to anyone and everyone who would listen.
I mean, I loved Bollywood movies as a kid, but I think for me it felt more like just a delving into like Sujata's essence. You know what I mean? It's her Sujata's experience of being Indian, That's what I felt like I did.
Wow. Wonderful. I'd like to ask another question for everyone as well. And it's related to the themes of this growing phenomenon of like overachieving children in particular, who never fully leave the nest, who are still somehow tethered to their parents. And there's a bit of I don't want to say controversy, but maybe a debate when it comes to, especially within South Asian families. And I mean, I'm Southeast Asian, and I currently am with my family during COVID, and they are over the moon, but other people outside of my world think this is the saddest experience ever. And I want to talk a lot more about this sort of dual phenomenon that is both like duty and shame, right? And really to ask all of you, what do you think this film has to say about the expectations that are created for second generation immigrant children, and how they start to understand their own sense of self-worth? Sorry, that's a big question, but it's one that I find important.
I'll take it first, and then you guys can elaborate. Like you, my parents would love for me to be home during COVID, and it would be great. And I'm actually thinking of just like going back for the holidays for like 2 or 3 months. And in our culture, it's not shameful to like just stay at home throughout your like 20s, 30s, because your parent, it's just such a familial culture. So for me, in terms of the film, it was really important to show that this family is tied together and they all love each other in their different ways. And the shame is not really in Monica staying at home. It's more about like, what is she doing with her life? Like, she doesn't have a good job, and it's just the pressures put on her by more society than even her family and other people judging them. And so I think I just really wanted to show just a normal Asian / South Asian family living in the suburbs, how they connect to American culture, but also they are still very much in touch with the Indian side of things. And you can tell in terms of like how they live and how they communicate with each other. And, that's something that I grew up with. So I just wanted to make sure that it was shown in an authentic way in the movie.
One of the things that I found interesting about the character of Jaya is that even though she's the parent, she has her own push-pull with the two sides of that dynamic as well. I think that she looks back and she remembers, if not abuse, the harshness that her husband had with Sunny. And Sunny?
Yeah, Sunny.
Yeah.
Well, no, because I was like, it's Dada and Booney. So
yeah.
Right, yeah. And I think that she does, she watches the spelling bee when her daughter was just this like incredible winner, the best of everyone over and over again. But at the same time, she also has her own Western aspects, whatever that means, or what we perceive as Western aspects, where she wants them to be free and just to be happy. And she wants Monica to go out there and get a life, you know what I mean? And not worry so much about her and not be home. And yet then there's the shame about maybe her daughter not being as successful as she should be, the shame around her son having his own troubles, and so I think she just vacillates, but I think that just love just trumps the conflict within her.
Sorry, my roommate's making faces at me. He's just walking out. So, this is really something that I actually sort of did a deep dive with, especially with Sunny, and kind of personally as a South Asian actor that comes from a family of all doctors. Both my parents are doctors. My dad's one of 8. 6 of his siblings are doctors. All of their spouses are doctors. So, going into the arts, there's like this whole, like, what is, duty and shame? Is he choosing a profession that is, yeah, exactly. How did I messed what up happened? So terribly? And so, obviously my parents are very, very supportive, but, moving to Sunny as a character, it's like, okay, here's this guy who's in California, who's a trainer, who's basically pushing a pyramid scheme, right? And my mom has no problem with that. Whereas like Monica would be like, dude, what the hell's wrong with you? Like as a sister, brother, sister, like you call him out on his shit. But the thing is that what's pushed away and what's shunned is his actual problem, which is his mental health. And that I think just overall as Asian communities, they feel shame if mental health is an issue versus just some sort of other, sort of physical illness that may be more tangible to sort of treat and stuff. They think, oh, if you deal with mental illness or you have a mental illness, there's something wrong with you or you're weak. And that sort of shame and how that shame perpetuates bad life choices or, doesn't give conducive environments for improvement. And sort of tackling that aspect of shame specifically through the South Asian lens and, broader, just through the health lens. And I really wanted to bring that sort of subject matter to light through Sunny's problems and through that character. And, you know, obviously I talked to Sujata a lot about where she wanted that inspiration to come from and how she wanted that mental illness to be displayed within the family unit, specifically within the South Asian family.
I'm really glad you brought up that subject. That's actually like specifically one of the questions I had, especially for you, Ritesh. You know, thankfully, I think there is a growing understanding and compassion within South Asian communities and Asian communities at large when it comes to mental illness, and especially how it's actually much more prevalent amongst immigrant communities and refugee communities. And people realize, but because there's a lack of specific language or even the kind of things you mentioned with stigmatization, there's a lack of ability to carefully treat it. I wanted to first talk a little bit about your own process of understanding and developing this character and the specific condition that your character has. And then to talk a little bit more broadly about, I guess, the things I've just mentioned about how these things are impacting the South Asian community, especially in America.
You know, specifically with the character, I sat down with Suj because she has personal experience with this, and I wanted to talk to her about what she specifically wanted to portray on the screen, because we are only seeing a slice of these people's lives. And, you know, for me, I really wanted to focus on the relationships that Sonny had with his sister and his mother, and how this mental illness affects that relationship. What kind of stress does it put on their relationship? And then how does that change the family dynamic as a result? How does that affect my sister and mom's relationship with each other? Because they're on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to how they should deal with me or with Sonny. And for me, we kind of came down after, you know, looking at the text, and the one advantage of both my parents being doctors and all of my aunts and uncles is that I had unlimited medical resources at my disposal in terms of research and just sort of academically talking about it. And then a lot of my friends are in medical school. And so a handful of psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists spoke to them, read a bunch of medical journals. And we basically, for me, I felt like the most appropriate diagnosis was borderline personality disorder, which kind of focuses on the inconsistency of personality. The kind of, I always think about it as a pendulum, and where is the character sitting? You know, if he feels like he's in a good mood, he's not actually sitting at a stable 5. He's in the middle. He's actually at a positive 10, which means at any moment the pendulum could swing back to, you know, a 1 on the negative side. And sort of that explosiveness and the inconsistency in his inability to sort of just stay in the center, and how that affects them, and what inspires him to have his personality swing back and forth. You know, there's trigger moments for him. And really, ultimately, our goal was to, in the bigger picture, start a discussion. You know, everyone has their vice. Everyone deals with their ups and downs. But I think what's important is, as a community, as a broader community, we have to have the strength and sort of just the understanding that talking about these problems doesn't mean that you are a problem or that you have a problem. Because there's always resources to get help. It's just a matter of guiding each other to those resources and having that type of communication, which hopefully, you know, we're able to convey throughout, you know, the story and the movie.
I think that's wonderful, all the things that you just said, and especially the kind of care and consideration that you've taken into handling this kind of subject matter. I wanted to open it up a little bit more and speak broadly about the subject of intergenerational violence that I think is related to the condition of Sonny, and also to a lot of the things that are going on, and to also include Monica's character and other characters that are where these expectations are so high to a point where there's almost like a sense of suffocation that's happening. Like, I mean, this is my own interpretation. You know, in a way, Monica's going through her own kind of suffering, but it's a different kind of suffering that's maybe a bit more internalized and passive and introverted, one could say. But I wanted to talk about how, I guess this is a question for everybody, and I think it applies to all the characters that are in the film, but how the experiences of this particular Southeast Asian or South Asian family and like translates into certain experiences of violence. And for those who are watching this film and either have suffered it or even possibly even committed those acts of violence, what do you hope they could take away from this?
Anna, do you want to take it first, or?
I do think it's a very, this intergenerational violence, and it's interesting. It's real. It exists, and I think the thing is that we want to, and sometimes it's also just verbal violence, verbal abuse. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is a sort of cultural pressure for South Asians to just keep it under wraps and just kind of disassociate. Don't let anybody know. Don't think about the greater implications. You're fine. It's over. Everybody's fine. Move on. And I certainly, have witnessed that in my extended family. I'm sure all of us have to some degree. And so there is an element of shame to it, because it is so much kept under wraps and kept in the darkness. And I think that what I'd like people to take from it is just that when it's brought to light, it's not to make anyone seem bad or wrong. What it's bringing to light is complexity of a situation, where then hopefully the response can be empathy and compassion and looking to solve it in a more real and nuanced way.
Yeah, for me, when I was writing the script, I do have experience with mental illness and intergenerational violence in my extended family, and I wanted to portray that in a way that was, not exploitative, number one. And number two, I wanted it to be authentic in a way of not really focusing on the abuser, but on how it affects the people around them and how it affects everyone in a very different way. Like you said, you were very intuitive in terms of Monica's character. She is affected by all of this, but it manifests in a crazy way, in a crazy internalized way. And with Sonny, it manifests in a very physical way. And he's a trainer. He's a physical person. So that's how he deals with difficult situations. And whereas Monica, she's a spelling bee champion. She deals with stuff internally in her brain. And something that I also wanted to focus on is Jaya and her character, and how I feel like her character is so cool because you can watch her go through this growth of okay, she loves her children. Okay, she has to deal with things that happened in the past. She's also living in the present moment, but she's also, you can tell that she's ready for a hopeful future. And she has her friends around her to kind of buoy her into the next, whatever the sequel is, for definition, please, So you can tell I wanted to not, like Anna said, I didn't want to judge the situation, but I wanted audiences to come out with, there is hope at the end of all of this for every single character. And if you're watching it and you have experienced this personally, then I would hope that you also come out with a sense of lightness as well.
I'm really glad you actually mentioned Anna's character, because that is, I had a question about that character. I actually found her to be the most complex person of all, and I'm really trying not to spoil what happens, but it is quite a revelation that comes up in the film, so I'm restraining myself. But in a sense, when it happened, I just kind of had to pause for a second, did she really go there? I'd love to talk about maybe your process, Anna, about how you wanted to represent that entire thread, while at the same time, I'll say carefully, retaining sympathy and retaining sort of making sure that the audience is still on your side. I'll keep it there.
Yeah, well, for me, so much of it was on the page. I mean, that's why I wanted to do this film. When Sujata sent me the script, what I loved about Jaya was that she is not a stereotype. You know, I was telling them earlier, you know, so often when you play a South Asian or, you know, certain different kinds of ethnic moms, you just, the character on the page is an idea, and then you try to bring your own individuality to that character and try to make that character an individual. And that wasn't something I felt was all on me with this film, because that's who she was. This was a woman who had faith. Yes, she's Hindu. She's connected to her culture, but her connection to those things is uniquely hers. And is her perception and interactions with her children influenced by her culture? Yes, of course it is. But it's very specific to her and to her children. And the way that her Western influences and American influences flow and meld into that, I just love that. And so then, as far as like what you were discussing, the surprise at the end or whatever it might be, I know I just keep saying love, but like really, I think that I just tried to ground everything she was doing in the fact that she's a person who lives in hope. She tends toward hope. She tends toward joy. That's what she naturally leans toward. She's going through a really painful situation. She's watching her daughter be stuck. And even worse than that, her son is suffering. He's suffering, and she has tried to help him, and she doesn't know how. And then to add to all of that, the two loves of her life can't get along. And so everything I just had to do with like, oh, but I can make this better. How can I make this better? And I'm not stupid. I can be kind of smart in the way that I can make this better. So
yeah, I've learned over 30 plus years that you never can underestimate the wiliness of a mother.
Yes.
And just
true.
Never underestimate what's going on in their head, because they know, and they're up to something at all times.
At all times.
I'm worried because I think my mom's just right outside, just wondering what's going on right now.
She's listening. Like, she's waiting for it to end.
Are you doing work? I'm like, this is work, I swear. I have one more question for you all. And, you know, as South Asian actors, and even though we're going through a really challenging time with COVID, and it's been really tough for the industry worldwide, you all respectively have been quite active and getting, you know, involved in very recognized ways. So I'd love to hear what might be next for you in what is essentially a pretty watershed time for diversity and inclusivity for the industry.
Well, something that I'm working on that's really an exciting thing for me is that you guys know that LeVar Burton has a cameo in the film, yeah. And I have worked on a season 1 of a series with him called This Is My Story, and it's about real life personal experiences of racism that he as a storyteller tells. And so we've been working on season 2 of that, and that's been very fulfilling and just amazing to be working with LeVar on something that we all care about and want to get the message out about.
Wonderful.
Tash?
Anna? Yeah.
I am a couple of things. I am one of the leads in a feature film, kind of an apocalyptic feature film called Rumble Strip, which actually will be available pretty much on all streaming platforms as of October 20th, so 4 days from now.
Woo!
Nice.
So check that out. I'm evil. I'm really evil. And, you know, one of the things I respect so much about Sujata is that she does create her own work and is like truly a multi-hyphenate. And that's something that I've always believed in. I wrote a solo show a few years back about Benazir Bhutto that I took off Broadway. And then I just never found the time to write more. And so over this time, the gift has been that I really have rediscovered writing, and I've finished a pilot, and I'm working on a second thing. So I'm excited about that and expanding out in that direction even more.
I'm currently right now pitching a project, so hopefully I'll have good news for that down the road. Other work that I've been doing that has come out, I'm the voice of Ken for Barbie and Ken. So we just had a movie drop on Netflix. I think it's called Princess Adventures, but we have a show called Barbie Dreamhouse Adventures that's constantly being renewed and updated. So that's been doing well. Animation obviously been doing well, just been easier to create during the pandemic. So yeah, check it out if you haven't seen it. It's great. Good for the family. So
my heart swells with so much pride to hear that you are the voice of Ken of Barbie and Ken.
Yeah, I'm the whitest boy in America.
That is just, like,
yes,
that is the great, like.
No, that one is my secret dig. To everyone, they're like, "What? Well," and I'm like, "Actually, I'm the voice of Ken," and then they don't believe me, and I'm like, "Go ahead, look it up, please."
Let's go. I'll wait. I'll wait right here. Just
that one is for all of us. That's for all of us. The unwritten rule. I have great pride to say that. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that, and thank you all so much. This has been both a moving and like smiles all around with all of you, and I appreciate you all so much for being brave artists and willing to speak so many truths to difficult subjects, while at the same time doing so in such a manner that is uplifting and heartwarming. And I encourage people who are signing up for HIFF to please check out this film. I saw it myself. It's really wonderful, and it takes place in a place I lived at, and I think it represents it very well. So thank you all for watching this discussion, and a special mahalo to all of our sponsors, our board of directors, and our HIFF Ohana members. My name is Lingo, and I guess that's that. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
you.